Hello there, and welcome back to the quiet corners of history. Tonight, we're leaving the familiar hum of your world behind. We're not visiting a grand palace or a sprawling battlefield. Instead, we are traveling to a place of quiet revolution, a place of steam and shadow and the low murmur of new ideas. We are going to find a seat in one of the very first coffee houses of 17th century Paris. This is a long day in the City of Light, and if we do our job correctly, you probably won't make it to the end of it. Let your mind drift. There is no test at the end of this. No need to memorize the dates or the names. Just let the story wash over you. If you enjoy these journeys into the past, a quiet subscription or a soft tap of the like button helps us continue to build these little escapes from the present. We're always grateful for your gentle support. And as always, we love to see where our stories are landing. Feel free to let us know in the comments where and when you're listening from. It is a small, wonderful thing to imagine this story unfurling in so many different bedrooms and living rooms, across so many different time zones all at once. Now, find your comfortable space. Let your shoulders soften. Let the sound of your own world fade, like a candle being carried down a long hallway. Let's ease into tonight's journey. The year is 1672, and you are walking. That is the first thing you notice, the sheer, unavoidable effort of it. There is no smooth pavement beneath your feet, no neat curb to guide your way. You are on the Rue de Tournon, a well-trodden artery of Paris, and it is more of a suggestion of a road than a finished product. The ground is a chaotic mosaic of packed earth, jutting cobblestones and mud. So much mud. It is a thick, greedy, odorous paste, a signature dish of the city, seasoned with horse droppings, discarded vegetable leaves, and whatever else the sky has seen fit to rain down. This immersive, multi-sensory experience is, of course, included at no extra charge. You have to pick your way through it all with a slow, deliberate rhythm, your heeled shoes sinking slightly with each step. The heels are not for fashion, not really. They are a practical tool, a small bit of architecture designed to lift you, ever so slightly, out of the muck. Around you, others are doing the same dance. A woman in a dark woolen dress gathers her skirts in one hand, her face a mask of concentration. A young boy, a shop assistant perhaps, leaps from one semi-solid island of earth to another, as nimble as a goat. A wealthy man, his wig a mountain of powdered curls, is being carried across, a particularly daunting puddle by two burly men who hire themselves out for just this purpose. They are hewn bridges, a temporary solution to a permanent problem. The air itself is thick, a tapestry woven from 100 different threads. There is the earthy, almost sweet smell of the damp ground, the sharp tang of wood smoke from 1,000 chimneys, the comforting scent of baking bread from a nearby boulangerie, and beneath it all, the less romantic realities, the faint, sour smell of the tanneries downwind, the ammonia from the stables, and the overwhelming perfume of a passing aristocrat, a floral tidal wave designed to drown out everything else. It's a valiant effort, but the city's natural perfume is a stubborn opponent. The sun is low in the sky, casting long, dramatic shadows that stretch like ink spills across the street. The light is golden buttery, and it catches the high windows of the tall, timber-framed houses that lean in towards each other over the street, as if sharing secrets. It's a beautiful light, a painter's light, but it is also a warning. Soon, it will be gone, and with its departure, the city will become a different place entirely. A place of deep, impenetrable darkness, where a misstep could mean a twisted ankle or a fall into something you'd rather not think about. Night in Paris is not a time for casual strolls. The city simply closes its eyes, but you are not heading home. Not yet. You are seeking something new, something you've only heard about in whispers and intrigued conversations. A drink. A strange, dark, bitter liquid from the Levant, said to sharpen the wits, cure melancholy, and keep a man awake long past the customary hour of sleep. It is called coffee. You turn a corner, leaving the relative grandeur of the Rue de Tournon for a smaller, more intimate lane that leads towards the Saint-Germain Fair. Here, the sounds become more concentrated. The rumble of carriage wheels on stone, the clatter of hooves, the distant cry of a water seller, his voice echoing in the narrow space. Allô, allô. You are looking for a sign, but not a written one. You are following a scent. And there it is. It cuts through the damp air, entirely alien. It is not the smell of wine, or bread, or wood smoke. It is a dry, nutty, almost scorched aroma. It smells of earth, but a different kind of earth, a sun-baked, foreign soil. It is the smell of roasting coffee beans. You follow it to its source, a small, unassuming booth, little more than a wooden counter set up in the mouth of an alley. It is nothing like the grand taverns with their painted signs and boisterous clientele. This place is quiet, somber, even. This is the humble establishment of an Armenian man known to the Parisians as Pascal. His full name is Pasqua Rossi, and in 1672, he is the city's primary, and perhaps only, purveyor of this newfangled drink. He brought the custom with him from Constantinople, setting up this simple stall to serve a curiosity to the Parisians. There is a small brazier glowing with orange embers, and over it, a man Pascal's assistant. Perhaps is slowly turning a long-handled pan filled with pale green beans, watching as they darken to the color of polished mahogany. You approach the counter. A few other men are already there, but they are not laughing or talking loudly. They are standing or sitting on rough wooden stools, cradling small, handleless porcelain cups in their hands. They stare into the dark liquid with a seriousness that seems disproportionate to the act of simply having a drink. They look like men beta-testing a new form of consciousness. Historians still debate the precise reasons Pascal eventually left Paris for London, where he would open the first coffee house in Britain. Perhaps the market here was not yet ready, or perhaps the competition from the powerful guild of lemonade sellers, who claimed the monopoly on such refreshments, simply became too much. But for now, in this moment, he is here. And he is the only game in town. You have a few small coins in your hand, enough for a cup. You nod to the man behind the counter, a figure with tired eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. He ladles a dark, steaming, almost syrupy liquid from a metal pot on the brazier into a small white cup. The cup is warm in your hands. The smell is intense, close, and surprisingly complex. You lift it and take your first sip of the 17th century. The liquid is hot, hotter than you expected, and you feel the warmth spread from your tongue through your entire body. A sudden, pleasant shock against the damp chill of the evening. And then comes the taste. It is nothing like the sweet wines or thin ales you are used to. It is profoundly, intensely bitter. Not a disagreeable bitterness, not like medicine, but something deep and complex, with an undercurrent of something like scorched caramel or toasted nuts. It is the taste of the smell that drew you here, concentrated and delivered in a single potent wave. There are no options. No milk, no sugar, no request for a lighter roast. This is it. Coffee in its unadorned, unadulterated, original form. You look into the small cup. The liquid is black and opaque, and at the bottom, you can see a thick sediment of fine grounds, a dark mud that mirrors the street outside. This is coffee brewed the Turkish way. The grounds boiled directly in the water and left to settle. It requires a slow, patient kind of drinking. If you rush it, you'll get a mouthful of grit. The cup itself, small and delicate, feels impossibly fragile in your hands. It has no handle, forcing you to hold it carefully, to feel its heat, to be present with it. It's the 17th century equivalent of an espresso shot, but with significantly more grit and existential weight. You take another, more measured sip, and you look around at the other patrons of this tiny, open-air establishment. They are a curious mix. Not the high nobility you'd see in the gardens of the Palero, nor the rowdy soldiers you'd find in a cheap tavern. These are men of the middling sort. A pair of merchants, their conversation a low, serious hum, their heads bent together over a ledger. A student from the nearby university, his cloak ink-stained, a book tucked under his arm, staring into the middle distance as if the coffee is helping him unravel a particularly thorny philosophical problem. A foreigner, perhaps another man from the Levant, who seems perfectly at home, drinking his coffee with a quiet, practiced ease. They are all here for the effect as much as the taste. This is not a drink for leisurely intoxication. It is a tool. It promises clarity, focus, a stay against the encroaching fog of fatigue. In a world powered by muscle, water, and wind, a world that largely surrenders to the rhythms of the sun, the ability to command one's own wakefulness is a strange and potent new form of power. You can feel it beginning to work on you. A gentle but insistent sharpening of the senses. The edges of the world seem a little crisper. The low conversations around you become more distinct. The chill in the air feels less penetrating. This is the central, unspoken truth of this place. It's a transaction. You trade a few coins and the acceptance of a bitter taste for a few more hours of sharp, productive thought. Major historical fact alert. The powerful guild of lemonade vendors, the Limonadiers, initially held the exclusive right to sell drinks like this to the public. They saw coffee as a threat and fought a bitter legal battle against the first coffee sellers. It was a classic turf war, a fight over who owned the right to quench the city's thirst. The coffeemen, like Pascal, were operating in a legal gray area, and eventually they would break away to form their own guild. But right now, the tension is palpable. Pascal sells only coffee. No lemonade, no sweet cordials. He's a specialist, an outlaw of refreshment. You remember the summer when vendors sold icy, sweet sherbets or sorbets as they were called. Delightful treat made from fruit juice and snow or ice brought down from the mountains. It's a strange cultural tidbit that the same class of vendors who specialized in these frozen desserts would also become the purveyors of this intensely hot, bitter drink. The technology of cold and the chemistry of heat, all tangled up in the same commercial enterprise. But there is no sorbet here, only the singular focused heat of the coffee. You watch the two merchants. They are not discussing poetry or the nature of the soul. You catch snippets of their talk. The price of Flemish lace, the reliability of a certain shipping captain, the new taxes imposed by the king's finance minister Colbert. It is the mundane, vital business of the world, conducted over this strange new fuel. The atmosphere is one of intense seriousness, but the subject matter is for the most part profoundly ordinary. It's as if the sheer novelty of the drink demands a certain theatrical gravity. A man next to you coughs a dry, dusty sound. He takes a sip from his cup and sighs, not with pleasure, but with a kind of weary satisfaction, as if he's just taken a dose of necessary but unpleasant medicine. The supposed health benefits of coffee were a major selling point. It was touted as a cure for drunkenness, a balm for headaches, a digestive aid, and a defense against the plague. Scholars still debate precisely when the perception of coffee shifted from being primarily a medicinal tonic to a social lubricant. Are you witnessing that shift now in the quiet interactions of these men? Or are they all still just here for the cure? You take another sip. The bitterness is becoming more familiar now, less of a shock. You are acclimatizing. You notice the way the steam from your cup curls up into the darkening air, a fleeting ghostly white against the deep blue of the twilight sky. The sound of the city is beginning to change. The sharp, busy noises of the day are softening, replaced by the more sporadic sounds of a city preparing for night. A distant church bell tolls the hour. A mother calls her children home, her voice carrying down the lane. The clatter of wooden shutters being closed and barred echoes from the high windows above. The world is winding down, preparing for sleep. But you and the handful of men around you are doing the opposite. You are drinking a beverage designed to defy the night. You hold the small, warm cup in your hands and feel a quiet, strange connection to these strangers. You are all pioneers of a sort, participants in a small, daily ritual that will, in time, change the world. It will fuel revolutions, inspire symphonies, and power the endless churn of commerce. But for now, it's just this: a cup of hot, bitter liquid, shared in the growing darkness of a Parisian evening. You take one last, slow sip, letting the warmth settle deep in your bones. The dregs at the bottom of the cup are thick. Your time here is done. The street and whatever comes next awaits. With the empty cup returned, you step away from the small pool of light cast by Pascal's brazier and back into the deepening gloom of the Parisian evening. The coffee has left a pleasant warmth in your stomach and a strange, metallic clarity in your mind. The world feels sharp, immediate. The problem is, you can no longer see it very well. Night has fallen not like a blanket, but like a lid being placed on a box. The sliver of sky between the leaning houses has deepened from indigo to a soft, starless black. The city's innovative energy-saving program, also known as a complete and total lack of streetlights, is now in full effect. This is the true curfew of the 17th century. Not one declared by a king, but one imposed by the simple physics of light and shadow. The respectable citizens are now behind their locked doors and shuttered windows. The streets belong to the cats, the rats, and those with business that cannot wait for the dawn. And, apparently, to you. You are not going home. That first taste of coffee was merely an appetizer. You are seeking the main course, a new establishment you have heard of, one that promises a bit more. Comfort. A place with 4 walls, a roof, and perhaps even a chair with a back. Your journey takes you deeper into the labyrinthine network of streets that make up the Latin Quarter. The ground, which was a treacherous landscape of mud and stone by day, is now a series of invisible traps. You move slowly, one hand outstretched, occasionally brushing against the cold, damp stone of a wall. You are navigating by memory, by the feel of the ground beneath your feet, and by the faint map of the coffee's effect on your brain. You step, with a soft squelch, into a puddle of something you sincerely hope is just water. It is a thrilling game of chance with every footfall. The joy of navigating an open sewer in total darkness is an experience modern life has unfairly stolen from us. The sounds of the night are different here, quieter but more distinct. The gurgle of water running down a central gutter in the street. The distant, mournful cry of an owl from a church belfry. The sudden, startling clatter of a loose roof tile falling into an alleyway. And then, a new sound. The rhythmic tread of heavy boots on stone, accompanied by the metallic rattle of steel. You press yourself into a darkened doorway, your heart giving a little thump against your ribs. A small patrol of the Royal Watch march past. There are 4 of them, clad in leather jerkins, carrying halberds that look absurdly long and clumsy for these narrow streets. One man at the front holds a lantern, its flickering candlelight casting huge, dancing shadows that make the men look like giants. They are the official keepers of the peace, tasked with patrolling the city from dusk until dawn. In theory, they are a deterrent to crime. In practice, their effectiveness is a subject of some debate. They are poorly paid, often conscripted, and their primary strategy for dealing with trouble seems to be making enough noise to ensure any actual criminals are long gone by the time they arrive. They pass your hiding spot without a glance, their conversation a low rumble about a game of cards, and then they are gone, their light and their noise swallowed by the darkness. You wait a moment, letting the silence resettle, before continuing on your way. You are not the only one navigating this darkness. Up ahead, you see a small, moving star. It is a torch, held aloft by a boy who can be no more than 10 years old. He is a porte-flambeau, a torchbearer for hire. For a small fee, he will guide you through the treacherous streets, his flame a little bubble of safety in the oppressive dark. A wealthy-looking man is walking briskly behind him, his face illuminated in the flickering orange light, anxious to get home. This is a common sight, this temporary purchase of light and security. Historians still ponder the true level of danger on these streets. Sensationalist pamphlets of the era paint a picture of a city overrun with cutthroats and footpads, where any unescorted walk at night was a dance with death. Yet, thousands of people navigated the city every night without incident. Perhaps the truth, as it so often does, lies somewhere in the murky middle. You don't have the coin to spare for a torch boy, so you continue your own slow, careful progress. You are close now. You can smell it again. That same wonderful, earthy, roasted scent of coffee. But this time, it is mingling with something else. The scent of beeswax candles and, faintly, perfume. You see a warm, inviting glow spilling from a set of windows up ahead. The windows themselves are a sign of prosperity. They are made of many small panes of glass, a costly and fashionable material, unlike the oil paper or cloth that covers the windows of poorer homes. This is your destination. Not a simple stall like Pascal's, but a proper maison de café, a coffee house. It is called Café Laurent, named for its proprietor, a man who saw Pascal's humble enterprise and decided it could be done with a great deal more style, and therefore a great deal more profit. There is no grand sign, only the light from within and the name painted discreetly above the dark wooden door. It feels less like a shop and more like an invitation into a private home. The coffee's promise of wakefulness has led you here, through the dark and the mud. You pause at the door, brushing a few specks of dried mud from your coat. You take a breath, the clear, sharp air of the night mixing with the warm, complex aroma of the cafe. Then, you pull open the heavy door and step inside. The change is immediate and overwhelming. You step out of the cold, damp, silent darkness and into a bubble of warmth, light, and sound. The air inside Café Laurent is thick and hazy with smoke, not the acrid smoke of a wood fire, but the gentler, sweeter smoke of beeswax candles and the vapor from clay pipes. And everywhere, that powerful, pervasive scent of coffee, a rich and comforting blanket that seems to soak into the very wood of the walls. The room is small, but it feels energized, alive. It is a stark contrast to Pascal's somber, open-air stall. Here, the proprietor, Monsieur Laurent, has understood a crucial fact about his clientele. They are not just buying a drink, they are buying an environment. The walls are paneled in dark, polished wood, which reflects the light from a dozen candles set in iron sconces. But the real masterstroke, the thing that makes the room feel twice as large and infinitely more luxurious, are the mirrors. Two large mirrors, their surfaces wavy and slightly distorted, are hung on opposite walls. This is a staggering display of wealth. Mirror glass, a technology perfected by the Venetians, is fantastically expensive, more valuable than most paintings. The new royal palace at Versailles is being filled with them, and now, here they are, in a public coffee house, creating an endless, flickering reflection of the candlelit room. It's a clever trick, making the place seem more crowded, more important, and more brightly lit than it actually is. The floor is not stone or bare wood, but covered in a fine layer of white sand. This is the 17th century carpet cleaner. It absorbs the mud and grime tracked in from the street, as well as any spilled drinks or stray pipe ash. At the end of the night, it will be swept up and replaced, taking all the dirt of the day with it. You scuff your shoes on the small mat by the door and find your way deeper into the room. The clientele is much the same as at Pascal's, yet subtly different. They are still mostly men, still from the educated and professional classes, but here they seem more relaxed, more settled. Instead of rough stools, there are long wooden benches with thin cushions and a few small, round tables. In one corner, two men are bent over a chessboard, their faces masks of intense concentration. They have been there for hours, you can tell, moving their carved ivory pieces with agonizing slowness, a single cup of coffee sitting cold and forgotten between them. They play as if the fate of France itself hangs on the outcome of their game. Near the back of the room, a man sits alone, writing furiously in a leather-bound book with a quill pen. He writes, pauses to stare at the ceiling, takes a quick sip of coffee, and then writes again, the scratching of his pen a tiny, persistent sound beneath the general hum of conversation. Is he a poet? A playwright? A political pamphleteer drafting a seditious new tract? This is the power of the coffee house. It is a public stage for private thought, a place where the work of the mind is fueled and, in a way, performed. You find an empty space on a bench between a man meticulously cleaning his spectacles and another who is reading a printed news sheet, his lips moving silently as he follows the words. There is no waiter service as you would know it. You catch the eye of a young boy, Lawrence's son perhaps, who darts between the tables with a pot of coffee and a tray of cups. You hold up a single finger, and he nods, making his way over to you. He places another small, handle-less porcelain cup in front of you, just like the one you had at Pascal's. But then, he does something new. He places a small bowl on the table, containing rough, grayish-white chunks of sugar. Avec du sucre? He asks. Sugar. Another expensive, imported luxury. This is Lawrence's innovation. He is sweetening the deal, literally, catering to the French palate, which has a growing fondness for all things sweet. The bitter medicinal tonic is being transformed into a pleasurable indulgence. Food historians still discuss the exact moment this transition became standard practice. But here it is, happening on your table. You hesitate for a moment, then nod. You take one of the rough lumps and drop it into the hot, black liquid. It fizzes for a second and then dissolves, vanishing into the depths. You stir it gently with a small pewter spoon. The addition of sugar feels like a small act of rebellion, a personalization of this standardized drink. You lift the cup and take a sip. The difference is remarkable. The intense bitterness is still there, the deep roasted foundation of the flavor, but it is now rounded, softened by the wave of sweetness. It is more complex, more immediately pleasant. It is no longer just a tool for wakefulness. It is becoming a treat. You feel the familiar warmth spread through you, reinforcing the caffeine that is already humming gently in your veins. The hazy, candlelit room seems to come into even sharper focus. The conversations around you, a tapestry of French, Latin, and even a little Italian, weave together into a single, soothing hum. You lean back against the wooden wall, cradling the warm cup in your hands. You have arrived. You are no longer just an observer on a muddy street. You are a participant, a small, quiet part of the warm, thinking, chattering heart of the Parisian night. You take another slow sip of your sweetened coffee. The taste is already becoming a familiar comfort, a small, warm anchor in this sea of impressions. You let your gaze drift around the room, taking in the details. The candlelight glints off a man's silver shoe buckle. It catches in the clouded glass of a mirror. It illuminates the rising steam from a dozen different cups. The air is alive with the gentle percussion of the cafe. The soft clink of a spoon against porcelain, the rustle of a turning page, the low murmur of voices, and the quiet rhythmic hiss of a clay pipe being smoked in the corner. Your attention settles on the man you noticed when you first sat down, the one with the news sheet. He has finished reading it to himself. He carefully folds the single large sheet of paper, his movements precise and deliberate. It is not the crisp, white paper you might be familiar with. It is a coarse, grayish sheet of rag paper, slightly translucent in the candlelight, and covered in a dense, small typeface with long, elegant S's that look like F's to the untrained eye. This is the Gazette de France, the nation's premier, and indeed only, weekly newspaper. A few men at the nearby table, who had been watching him read, now lean in expectantly. One of them, a stout man with a hopeful expression, asks, "Well, Jourdain, what news from the court? Has the king returned from Versailles?" The man Jourdain takes a theatrical sip of his coffee. He's enjoying this. In an age where literacy is a privilege and a printed news sheet is an expense few can justify, possession of the Gazette makes him the center of a small, information-hungry universe. He's not just a reader. He's a performer, an unauthorized audiobook narrator for the pre-industrial world. He clears his throat. "The king," he announces, with the gravity of a royal herald, remains at his new palace. The Gazette reports at length on the latest marvels of the gardens. It seems Monsieur L'Entrée has devised a new series of fountains that can be seen from the royal bedroom. A collective sigh of mild disappointment ripples through his small audience. Fountains. They were hoping for a scandal, a new tax, a declaration of war. Fountains are nice. But, Jordan continues, a sly smile playing on his lips, there is other news. He has them hooked now. He unfolds the paper again. From the Low Countries. Our brave soldiers under the command of the Prince de Conde have successfully taken another fortress from the Dutch. The battle was, it says here, short and glorious. This is better, a victory. There are murmurs of approval. A man raises his cup in a silent patriotic toast. The news is, of course, nearly 3 weeks old. The time it took for the report to travel from the battlefield to Paris, be approved by the state censors, set in type, printed, and distributed means that this breaking news is already a fossil. But here, in the warm candlelight of the cafe, it feels immediate and vital. This is the major historical function of these nascent coffee houses. They are nodes in a new network of information. They are where the printed word is consumed, digested, and debated by a public hungry for connection to the wider world. The Gazette, founded decades earlier by Théophraste Renaudot, was a state-controlled organ, designed to project an image of a glorious, stable, and powerful France under an infallible king. Jourdain continues to read, his voice rising and falling as he relays snippets of information. A report on the price of grain in Lyon. A notice about a new ambassador arriving from Venice. A detailed, and likely heavily embellished, account of a lavish ball held at the Louvre. He is reading to an audience of varying literacy. Some of the men listening could read for themselves if they chose, but many could not. An obscure but essential cultural practice of the time was this public reading. Information was a communal property, shared aloud, its meaning shaped by the tone and emphasis of the reader. You watch the faces of the men listening. They are rapt. They are leaning forward, catching every word. For these few minutes, the four walls of Café Larn dissolve, and the room becomes a window onto the entire kingdom and even beyond. You check on the chess players in the corner. They have not moved. One of them has his chin resting in his hand, his eyes fixed on the board. The other is staring at a single black pawn. It's possible they have been in this exact position since the fortress in Holland was actually taken. The game they are playing seems to operate on a different timescale entirely, a geological epoch of pure strategy. Jourdain finishes his reading with a flourish, folding the paper and setting it down on the table with an air of finality. The spell is broken. The room's general hum returns, but it is louder now, more energized. The news, stale as it may be, has provided fresh fuel for conversation. Men turn to their neighbors, dissecting the military victory, complaining about the grain prices, gossiping about the Venetian ambassador. Historians continue to debate how much these official, state-sanctioned news sources truly reflected the private opinions of the Parisian populace, or if they were merely a script from which the public was expected to read. You take another sip of your coffee. The sugar has almost entirely masked the bitterness now. leaving a smooth, rich, and warming flavor. You feel alert, your mind sharp, yet your body is relaxed, settled into the comfortable rhythm of the cafe. You are not just drinking coffee. You are drinking in the news, the gossip, the energy of a city and a nation, all condensed into this single, smoky, candlelit room. The world, which felt so dark and treacherous just a short while ago on the street outside, now feels knowable, contained. Its events delivered to you right here on this cushioned bench. The official news from the Gazette acts like a stone dropped into a calm pond. The initial splash of shared information quickly dissipates into 100 widening ripples of private conversation. The general hum of the cafe fractures into smaller, more intense discussions. The topics are no longer the safe, state-approved reports of distant victories and royal gardening projects. Now, the talk turns to what was not in the paper. The meaning behind the news. The truth between the lines. The two men next to you, who had been listening intently to the reading, now turn to each other, their voices dropping to a more conspiratorial pitch. One is older, with the weary eyes of a scholar or a clerk. The other is younger, his face still smooth, his expensive lace collar a little too pristine. He looks like a law student, full of theories and short on experience. "Another glorious victory," the older man says, his voice laced with a gentle irony. One assumes they neglect to mention the cost. In coin and in men. The student nods eagerly. They say the king's new taxes are to fund the war, but I hear more goes to the masons and sculptors at Versailles than to the quartermasters in Flanders. We are paying for palaces, not provisions. This is dangerous talk. Criticizing the king's fiscal policy, even in a hushed tone, is a hobby with a notoriously short lifespan. You instinctively find yourself leaning away slightly, as if to physically distance yourself from the seditious words. Yet you also find yourself leaning in, straining to hear more. The coffee in your veins seems to sharpen not just your senses, but your curiosity. The older man takes a long, slow draw from his clay pipe, letting the smoke curl from his lips before he speaks. He doesn't respond directly. Instead, he says, "Did I ever tell you the story of the great lion who feared his own cubs?" The student shakes his head, his eyes wide. You realize what is happening. This is a common and necessary art form in an absolute monarchy. Political commentary disguised as a fable. You cannot speak of King Louis XIV and his relationship with his powerful nobles, but you can certainly tell a story about a fictional lion. "This great lion," the man begins, his voice now a low storytelling rumble, "was the most powerful in all the forest. But he had a long memory. He remembered a time when the other big cats, the leopards and the tigers, had nearly torn the forest apart in their brawling." He pauses, and you know he's not talking about leopards and tigers. He's talking about the Fronde. This series of brutal civil wars, which had rocked France just 20 years ago, is the defining trauma of the political generation. It was a chaotic and violent period when the great nobles rose up against the crown, plunging the country into anarchy. King Louis, who was just a boy at the time, was even forced to flee Paris. It is this single major historical fact that underpins his entire reign. His obsession with control, with centralizing power, with building the magnificent cage of Versailles to keep the nobility distracted and close at hand. It all stems from the terrifying memory of the Fronde. So this wise lion, the man continues, decided he would not allow his cubs to grow so strong and unruly. He built a magnificent new den, far from the old hunting grounds. It was a beautiful den, with waterfalls and sunning rocks and endless distractions. He invited all the leopards and tigers to live with him there. He fed them the choicest meats, groomed their fur, and taught them amusing games to play. They spent their days bickering over who got the sunniest rock, or who had the most handsome spots, and they forgot all about how to hunt. They forgot their own strength. The allegory is so transparent it is almost beautiful. The student is captivated. The The story is a perfect summary of Louis XIV's strategy. Domesticate the warrior aristocracy by turning them into court dandies. The only thing missing is a tiny marquis wig on the tiger. It is impossible for us to know for certain how many of these hushed conversations skirted the edges of treason, or how many spies for the Lieutenant General of Police, Gabriel Nicolas de Lorraine, were sitting quietly on these very benches, sipping their own coffee and taking mental notes. The city's first modern police force had been established just a few years earlier, and its network of informants was rumored to be vast. The mirrors on the wall, which before seemed so grand and luxurious, suddenly feel like unblinking eyes, reflecting not just the candlelight but the quiet paranoia of the room. You glance around. No one seems to be paying the storyteller any mind. The chess players are still locked in their silent war. The writer in the corner is still scratching away with his quill. But the air seems heavier now, charged with the thrill of unspoken things. This is the other side of the coffee house's appeal. It is a place of intellectual freedom, but that freedom has limits, and dancing on its edge is a source of quiet excitement. The coffee makes men bold enough to debate the nature of royal power, but not quite bold enough to use the king's actual name while doing it. The old man finishes his pipe, tapping the spent ash into a small brass dish. His story is over. He does not offer a moral or an explanation. None is needed. The student looks thoughtful, processing the tale. He has just received a lesson in political science far more potent than any he might find in a lecture hall at the Sorbonne. You take the last sip of your coffee. The sweetness is gone, and the final mouthful is cool and slightly gritty with the dregs from the bottom of the cup. The warmth in your belly remains, but it is now joined by a different kind of energy, the electric hum of ideas, the quiet thrill of intellectual risk. You have been a spectator to a small, secret act of political discourse, a reminder that even in the most tightly controlled state, the human mind, fueled by a strange new drink, will always seek a way to speak its truth, even if it has to disguise it as a bedtime story about a lion. The fable of the lion and his cubs seems to hang in the air for a moment, a small cloud of allegorical smoke, before it dissipates back into the general murmur of the cafe. The old man and the student fall into a quieter, more personal conversation, their brief performance of political commentary complete. You feel a subtle shift in the room's energy. The initial jolt of the news and the subsequent thrill of seditious chatter have passed, giving way to a more relaxed, contemplative atmosphere. The coffee has done its work. The patrons are alert but settled. You decide it is time for another cup. The first was an experiment, the second a pleasure. This third cup feels like a commitment to staying, to lingering, to letting the rest of the evening unfold at its own unhurried pace. You catch the eye of the young boy again, who seems to glide through the room with an uncanny silence, a ghost in the machine of the cafe. He retrieves your empty cup and returns a moment later with a fresh one, the steam rising in a delicate column. As he sets it down, your attention is drawn to a small, almost comical drama unfolding at a nearby table. A man, dressed in the slightly too fashionable attire of a provincial gentleman trying to look like a Parisian, is staring at his own cup of coffee with an expression of profound disgust. He takes a tentative sip, grimaces, and shudders theatrically. His companion, a man who seems far more at home in these surroundings, watches him with an air of weary amusement. "It is poison, I tell you," the provincial man declares, his voice a little too loud for the room. "A taste of soot and despair. How can you drink this vile concoction?" His Parisian friend sighs. "It is an acquired taste, Jean-Pierre, like poetry or olives. You must give it time." "Time? I would rather give it to the gutter," Jean-Pierre retorts. "My physician in Orleans warned me of this. He says this Turkish drink heats the blood, dries the humors, and leads to a feverish disposition. He says it will make a man sterile." This pronouncement hangs in the air, a wonderful and weird cultural tidbit of 17th century medical theory. The idea that coffee could render a man impotent was a surprisingly widespread fear. It was a piece of popular pseudoscience, perhaps encouraged by the wine merchants who saw this new beverage as a serious commercial threat. It was a brilliant marketing move, really. Attack not the taste, but the drinker's very manhood. The Parisian man laughs, a short, sharp bark. Your physician in Orleans sounds like a man who has never left Orleans, he says, taking a pointedly long and satisfying sip from his own cup. Here in Paris, our doctors say it clears the mind, aids digestion, and cures the vapors. I have heard it said that Monsieur Molière himself drinks it to help him write his plays. The invocation of the great playwright's name seems to have an effect. Jean-Pierre looks slightly less certain. Molière, the king of comedy, the darling of the court and the city, if he drinks it, can it really be so bad? He stares at his cup again, as if it might suddenly sprout a witty retort. Historians still debate the specific influence of coffee on the explosion of intellectual and artistic creativity of the late 17th century, but the anecdotal link was already being forged in conversations just like this one. Was coffee the fuel for the Enlightenment, or just a fashionable accessory to it? The Parisian, warming to his theme, leans in. Think of it not as a beverage, but as a treatment. You have been on the road for 2 days. Your mind is clouded with the dust of the provinces. This, he says, tapping his own cup, is the cure. It is a broom for the mind. It sweeps out the cobwebs. This analogy, a broom for the mind, seems to strike a chord. Jean-Pierre, looking slightly chastened, picks up his cup again. He adds another 2 lumps of sugar, a desperate attempt to medicate the medicine. He takes a sip, and this time his grimace is less pronounced. It's a look of begrudging acceptance, of a man willing to suffer for the sake of mental clarity, or perhaps just to avoid looking like a country bumpkin. You have just witnessed a successful conversion. One more soul brought into the caffeinated fold. You turn your attention back to your own cup. The steam from it fogs the air in front of your face, momentarily blurring the room into a soft watercolor of browns and golds. You reflect on the idea of coffee as a medicine. It's not so far-fetched. The entire concept of health and wellness is different here. It's a delicate, precarious balance of 4 essential fluids, or humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Every food, every drink, every activity either heats or cools, moistens or dries the body, tipping this delicate balance. A doctor's prescription might just as easily be a change in diet as a dose of herbs. A cup of coffee, in this context, is not just a drink. It's a prescription for a dry, hot state of being, a counteragent to the cold, DMP melancholy that was seen as a common affliction of the scholarly and artistic temperament. Remember the man in the corner, writing in his book? He's not just a writer. He's a man managing his humors. He's using this hot, dry drink to fight off the cold, damp grip of writer's block, to achieve the ideal state of intellectual fervor. This is a major historical fact about the era's mindset. Medicine and daily life were inextricably intertwined. The coffee house is not just a cafe. It is a public apothecary of the mind, where men come to dose themselves with clarity. You take a sip from your cup. It's no longer just a warm, sweet, bitter drink. It's a carefully measured dose of intellectual fire, a tool for fine-tuning your own internal weather. The thought is both strangely alien and deeply, recognizably human. Your third cup of coffee tastes different again. Or perhaps it is you who has changed. The initial shock of the bitterness is a distant memory. The novelty of the added sugar has faded, and now you are left with the essence of the experience. The taste is simply the taste of here. It is the flavor of this room, of this moment. The coffee has worked its subtle magic, and you have become a part of the furniture, another quiet, observant soul in the warm, hazy ecosystem of Café Laurent. The evening has matured. The flow of people in and out has slowed to a trickle. Most of the men now present are fixtures, settled in for the long haul, anchored by conversation or contemplation. The air, thick with candle smoke and coffee steam, seems to slow time itself, stretching the minutes into long, luxurious threads. You look over at Jean-Pierre, the provincial gentleman who was so disgusted by his first taste of the vile concoction. He is now leaning forward, engaged in an animated discussion with his Parisian friend. He even gestures with his cup to make a point, the dark liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. His conversion appears to be total. He's gone from skeptic to evangelist in the space of an hour, a common trajectory in these early days. Your gaze drifts past him to a table you hadn't paid much attention to before. While much of the cafe is dedicated to the high-minded pursuits of chess and political discourse, this corner is humming with a different kind of energy. 4 men are huddled around a small table, their heads close together. They're not talking much. Their focus is on a small leather cup and a set of dice. They are playing a game of chance, their movements small, quick, and quiet. One man shakes the cup, a muffled rattle, and then brings it down hard on the wooden table. He lifts it to reveal the 3 small cubes of bone, their black pips stark in the candlelight. A low groan comes from one of his companions. A few small coins are pushed across the table. There is no loud shouting, no dramatic flair. This is not the boisterous gambling of a back alley tavern. This is a quiet, almost surgical affair, a brief diversion from the intellectual intensity of the rest of the room. This is an obscure but vital part of café society. Small-stakes gambling was an acceptable pastime, a way to pass the hours between conversations or business dealings. It was often technically illegal, falling under broad royal edicts against games of chance, but it was so commonplace as to be beneath the notice of the watch, unless a fight broke out. This quiet game is a perfect example of the city's talent for ignoring inconvenient laws. The men's faces are unreadable, their focus absolute. It is a strange counterpoint to the chess players on the other side of the room. Both groups are staring intently at small objects on a table, one at ivory kings and queens, the other at spotted cubes of bone. Both are lost in a world of rules and possibilities. But one game is a monument to pure logic, the other a complete surrender to chaos. The cafe has room for both. You turn your attention back to the hum of conversation. A man with a magnificent wig and a weary expression is holding court at a central table. He's not talking about fables or military campaigns. He's talking about books. "I received a letter today," he says, his voice carrying easily through the room, "from our friend Monsieur Huygens in The Hague." The name drops into the room with significant weight. Christian Huygens is one of the great scientific minds of the age, a physicist, astronomer, and inventor. He has read Descartes' new treatise on light, and he believes it is, to use his own words, fundamentally flawed in its first principles. A gasp, part scandalized, part delighted, comes from his listeners. To challenge the great René Descartes, the titan of French philosophy, is a bold move. The man with the wig smiles. He is sending me his written critique, 12 pages of it. I expect it will be the talk of the Academy for months. This is the sound of a major historical phenomenon in action. You are listening to a local report from the front lines of the Republic Day Letters, the Republic of Letters. This was not a physical place, but a vast invisible network of scholars, philosophers, and intellectuals that stretched across Europe. They were citizens of a borderless kingdom of the mind, and their primary tools were the quill pen and the postal service. They corresponded furiously, sharing discoveries, debating theories, and critiquing each other's work, an endless, continent-spanning conversation. The coffee house was a physical port in this ethereal network, a place where a letter from The Hague or Florence could be shared and become instant news for the city's intellectual elite. A younger man at the table dares to speak. but surely Descartes' model of the plenum. Ah, the man with the wig interrupts gently. Huygens argues that the very concept of the plenum is what prevents Descartes from understanding the true nature of a vacuum. It is a fascinating argument. He sips his coffee. We must have a proper debate when the letter arrives. They are not just gossiping. They are participating in the creation of modern science, hashing out the great questions of the universe over sweetened coffee. It is difficult to know for certain if a man's wit could truly elevate his station within these walls, or if the rigid class structures of the outside world were merely replicated in miniature. But for a moment, in the heat of a debate about the nature of a vacuum, a student could challenge a magistrate, and a clerk could question a nobleman, united by their shared intellectual passion. You look around the room. The writer in the corner is still writing, his quill a blur of motion. The chess game is still locked in its silent, epic struggle. The gamblers are starting a new round, their hopes renewed with a fresh shake of the dice. And at the central table, a conversation that started with a letter from Holland is now spiraling into a complex debate on the very nature of reality. You feel the third cup of coffee working on you differently. It's no longer just a stimulant. It feels like an admission ticket. You are not merely awake, you are connected. The world outside, with its mud and its darkness and its royal watch, seems 1,000 miles away. Here, in the candlelight, the real world is made of ideas, of arguments, of news from distant friends, and of the endless, fascinating, and sometimes ridiculous drama of the human mind at work. You take. The debate over Descartes and the nature of a vacuum continues, but its intellectual fervor has softened into a more meandering, philosophical exploration. The man with the wig has made his point, and now he and his companions are exploring its gentler currents. Their voices a low, rhythmic counterpoint to the quiet clinking of cups. The initial jolt of caffeine has long since metabolized into a state of sustained, thoughtful wakefulness. It is the perfect state for this time of night, when the world outside is asleep, and the world inside the cafe is running on the warm, dark fuel of coffee and ideas. You find your own attention drifting away from the philosophers and towards the silent, intense figure you've noticed all evening, the writer in the corner. He has not moved from his small table, which is now a chaotic little island of literary production. There is his inkwell, a simple pot of dark liquid, a stack of clean paper waiting to be filled, and a corresponding stack of completed sheets covered in a dense, almost frantic script. He seems to be single-handedly attempting to deplete the city's entire supply of ink. You watch his process. It is a ritual of intense concentration. He dips his quill, a long, elegant feather from a goose wing, into the inkpot, pauses for a fraction of a second to let the excess drip off, and then attacks the page. The scratching of the nib is a tiny, insistent sound, a miniature battle being waged against the silence of the blank sheet. He writes a few sentences, then stops abruptly, his hand hovering over the paper. He rereads what he has written, his lips moving slightly. He frowns. It's a reminder that writer's block is not a modern affliction. It's an ancient and venerable tradition. He dips the quill again, crosses out a line with a single savage stroke, and begins again. He's using a tool that you have never seen up close before. Beside his inkwell is a small shaker, like one for salt, filled with a fine pale powder. After writing a few lines, he picks it up and sprinkles the powder over the wet ink. This is a pounce pot, and the powder inside is likely ground cuttlefish bone or sandarac, a fine resin. It serves two purposes. It prevents the ink from bleeding on the porous rag paper, and it helps to dry it more quickly, preventing smears. He lets it sit for a moment, then tilts the page, allowing the excess powder to fall onto a spare sheet. It is a small, meticulous, and utterly essential part of the physical act of writing. Without it, his work would be a smudged, unreadable mess. This little shaker of dust is as important as the pen itself. What is he writing with such fierce, almost desperate, energy? Is it a letter to a lover? A new play he hopes will rival Moliere's? A poem? Or is it something more dangerous? You look at the intensity in his eyes, the way he occasionally glances over his shoulder, and you begin to suspect it is the latter. This is the hidden side of the Republic of Letters. For every officially sanctioned book, for every volume of philosophy that passed the scrutiny of the royal censors, there were 100 other works that could never see the light of day. This is a major historical reality of the age of Louis XIV. Censorship was absolute and ruthlessly enforced. A team of censors royal censors, was tasked with reading every single manuscript intended for publication. They were looking for anything that could be deemed heretical, seditious, or libelous. Their job was to protect the public from dangerous thoughts, such as the idea that a king might not be perfect or that a bishop might be corrupt. To publish a work without a royal privilege, an official license, was a serious crime. The punishment could be a massive fine, the destruction of the entire print run, and for the author and printer, a long, unpleasant stay in the Bastille. And yet, people continued to write. They wrote blistering critiques of the government, scandalous satires of court figures, and philosophical treatises that directly challenged the authority of the church. They wrote them by hand, in rooms just like this one, fueled by coffee and conviction. It is impossible to know for certain how many of these manuscripts, painstakingly written by candlelight, were ever published. Most were destined for a clandestine existence, passed from hand to hand, copied and recopied by scribes until the original author's words were diluted or distorted. Some would be smuggled to printing presses in Holland or Switzerland, countries with a more liberal approach to free expression, and then the finished books would be smuggled back into France, hidden in barrels of wine or bales of cloth. Is that the destiny of the pages piling up on this man's table? Is he drafting a secret history of the king's love affairs? A Republican tract arguing for the abolition of the monarchy itself. You watch him as he finishes a page. He reads it one last time, a flicker of satisfaction on his face. He carefully places it on the finished stack. It is just one more piece of paper in a dimly lit room, but it feels like a small, explosive device, a quiet testament to the irrepressible human need to speak truth to power, even if only to a blank page in the corner of a cafe. The room, which had felt like a sanctuary of open debate, now seems to have a secret, more dangerous heart. You are witnessing not just the consumption of ideas, but their illicit, risky birth. The scent of coffee mingles with the faint, thrilling smell of treason. The writer in the corner finally lays down his quill. He does not pack up his papers, but simply pushes his chair back slightly, a silent declaration that this session of intense creation is over. He stretches his arms above his head, his knuckles cracking softly, and then slumps back against the wall, his eyes closed. He has poured himself onto the page, and now he is an empty vessel. The rest of the cafe, which had been a blurred backdrop to his private struggle, slowly swims back into his focus and into yours. The debate on the nature of a vacuum has finally exhausted itself. The philosophers now engaged in a more terrestrial discussion about the quality of the wine at a certain nobleman's recent dinner party. The chess players have, to your astonishment, made some progress. The board is noticeably less crowded, and one of the players, the one who has been staring at the same pawn for what feels like a lifetime, now has a look of quiet panic on his face. His king is cornered. The end is near. Jean-Pierre, the provincial convert, is explaining to his Parisian friend, with the passion of a new believer, why coffee is superior to wine for an evening's conversation. He has fully adopted the local creed. It is at this moment of quiet, stable equilibrium that the heavy wooden door to the street opens again. It is not a new customer. The man who enters is not here for coffee. He carries a large, oddly shaped case made of dark, scuffed leather. He looks less like an artist and more like a man who has a very inconveniently shaped piece of luggage. He nods to Monsieur Laurent, who nods back, a silent agreement having clearly been made beforehand. The man finds an empty stool near the center of the room, not at a table, but in a small open space. He places his case carefully on the sandy floor and unbuckles its straps. The conversations in the room do not stop, but they falter slightly. A new element has been introduced, and the collective attention of the cafe is drawn to it. A subtle shift in the room's gravity. He pulls the instrument from its case. It is a viola da gamba, a beautiful and melancholic-looking thing. It has the curved body of a cello, but its shoulders are sloped, its back is flat, and its neck is fretted with loops of gut, like a lute. It is an instrument of quiet sophistication, a favorite of the aristocracy, not something you would typically expect to see in a public room filled with merchants and scholars. The man props the instrument between his knees. Gamba is Italian for leg, and begins to tune it, his head cocked to one side. He plucks a string, turns a wooden peg a fraction of an inch, and plucks it again. The gut strings are notoriously sensitive to changes in temperature and humidity, and the warm, steamy air of the cafe has likely thrown them completely out of whack. This tuning process is an intimate and necessary ritual. Once he is satisfied, he picks up his bow, a gracefully curved piece of wood, held with an underhand grip, and draws it across the strings. The sound that emerges silences the room completely. The chattering stops. The philosophical debate is cut short mid-sentence. Even the gamblers pause their game, their hands frozen over their dice, possibly because the music is beautiful, but more likely because it's hard to cheat when everyone is suddenly quiet. The music is not loud or flashy. It is intricate, reedy, and deeply resonant. It has the emotional complexity of a human voice. The sound is a world away from the boisterous tunes of a tavern fiddle or the grand fanfares of a royal procession. It is not happy music. It is not sad music. It is thinking music. It fills the spaces between the tables, curling around the candle flames, sinking into the dark wood of the walls. It is the perfect soundtrack for this place. This performance is a sign of a subtle but major historical shift in the culture of music. Traditionally, musicians were artisans, skilled craftspeople who were employed by the church or a wealthy patron. They provided music for a specific function, a mass, a ball, a theatrical performance. The idea of a musician playing for his own sake, for an audience of anonymous strangers in a public space, is a relatively new concept. This man is a freelancer, a journeyman of sound, making his living one performance at a time. Historians can only speculate whether these cafe performances were a common occurrence, or a rare treat that depended entirely on the whims of itinerant players. He plays a slow, stately allemande, its interwoven melodies like a complex thought unfolding in real time. His eyes are closed, his body swaying gently with the rhythm. He is no longer just a man with an awkward case. He is a conduit for something beautiful and abstract. You look around the room. Every face is turned towards him. The writer in the corner is staring, his own creative efforts forgotten. The man with the wig has his head tilted, a look of deep appreciation on his face. The chess game is utterly still, the checkmate suspended in time by the music. The soft gut-string tones of the viola da gamba are the only sound now, besides the faint hiss of the candles. The music weaves a new layer of meaning into the room. It speaks of melancholy, of contemplation, of a beauty that is complex and fleeting. It is the perfect accompaniment to the coffee, another imported luxury that stimulates the mind and soothes the soul. For these few minutes, the cafe is no longer just a place of conversation and debate. It has become a concert hall, a shared space of quiet, collective listening. The outside world has never felt further away. The final reedy note of the viola da gamba hangs in the air for a moment, a perfect, shimmering droplet of sound, before it fades into the profound silence of the room. For a beat, no one moves. The spell is absolute. Then, a collective sigh seems to ripple through the cafe, a soft exhalation of held breath. The silence is broken not by applause, that would be too vulgar, too theatrical for this space, but by a low murmur of appreciation and the quiet clinking of coins. The musician opens his eyes, a little dazed, as if returning from a great distance. Men reach into their pockets and purses, and a small procession begins. One by one, they walk over to the musician and drop a coin or two into the open mouth of his instrument case. It is a quiet, respectful transaction. The man with the wig gives a silver sisiu, a generous offering. The law student gives a few copper liars. Even one of the gamblers, with a look of mild surprise at his own generosity, tosses in a coin. It is not a payment for a service, but a shared contribution, an acknowledgement of the beauty he has brought into their evening. The musician nods his thanks to each man, his face impassive. He has offered them a brief escape into the abstract, and they have offered him the means to eat tomorrow. It is a simple, elegant economy. He does not play another piece. The moment was perfect, and he is wise enough not to try and replicate it. He carefully wipes down the strings of his viola da gamba with a soft cloth, lays it back in its velvet-lined case, and buckles the straps. The room slowly returns to its previous state, but the atmosphere has changed. The music has rinsed the air, leaving behind a feeling of calm and shared experience. The conversations that resume are softer, more subdued. The energy in the room is no longer the sharp, edgy buzz of caffeine and debate, but a mellower, more contemplative hum. It is getting late. Even the most potent coffee cannot hold back the tide of a full day forever. A few patrons begin to stir, gathering their cloaks, settling their informal tabs with Monsieur Laurent. The evening is beginning to fray at the edges. You remain on your bench, nursing the last of your now cool coffee. You watch the chess game finally, mercifully conclude. The man who was in trouble concedes with a subtle, respectful nod, gently tipping his own king over onto its side. It is the silent, universal signal of surrender. There is no gloating from the victor, only a quiet handshake. They have spent the better part of 4 hours locked in a silent, intellectual war, and now they are simply two men in a cafe again. They begin to pack away the ivory pieces, their private world dissolving back into the public one. It is here that you notice a small, easily overlooked detail. On a little shelf behind Monsieur Laurent's counter, next to the bags of green coffee beans and the stacks of clean porcelain cups, sits a small, unassuming object, a human skull. It is yellowish with age, its dark eye sockets staring out into the room with a placid emptiness. It is not decorated. It is not part of a larger display. It is just there. This is a wonderfully strange and specific cultural detail of the time. The skull is a memento mori, reminder of death. It was a common object in a scholar's study, a monastery, or even a place like this. Its purpose was not to be morbid or frightening. It was a philosophical tool. In a room dedicated to the life of the mind, to debate, and to the fleeting news of the day, the skull served as a quiet, constant reminder of mortality, vanity, and the ultimate endpoint of all human ambition. It says, without speaking, debate, write, play your games, enjoy your coffee, but remember, this is where you are headed. It is the ultimate conversation stopper, and yet no one seems to pay it any mind. It has become part of the decor. Its profound message faded into the background, like a piece of old wallpaper. This is a major historical fact about the 17th century European mindset. Death was not a hidden, sanitized event as it often is today. It was a visible, public, and ever-present reality. High infant mortality, rampant disease, and the lack of effective medicine meant that life was fragile and often short. The presence of the skull is not meant to be depressing. It is meant to be clarifying. It urges the viewer to use their time well, to focus on what is truly important. be it God, knowledge, or simply another game of chess. You look from the skull back to the patrons of the cafe. The writer is packing his stack of papers into a leather satchel, his face etched with fatigue, but also a deep satisfaction. The philosophers are laughing at some shared joke. Jean-Pierre is promising his Parisian friend that he will open a proper coffee house in Orleans, one with mirrors and comfortable cushions. The skull watches them all, impartial and silent. Scholars can only guess at the precise emotional and psychological effect these constant reminders of death had on the people of the past. Did it make them more pious, more fatalistic? Or did it, perhaps, encourage them to seize the small pleasures of the present with greater gusto? You finish the last of your coffee. The gritty dregs at the bottom of the cup feel symbolic, the earthy remains of a finished experience. The warmth in your belly, the clarity in your mind, the echoes of the music, the threads of conversation, they all swirl together into a single complex memory. The evening is drawing to a close. The time has come to leave this warm, bright bubble of thought and venture back out into the dark. The act of leaving is a slow, reluctant process. You rise from the bench, your limbs a little stiff from sitting so long. You give a nod to Monsieur Laurent, who is busy polishing cups behind the counter, the skull staring impassively over his shoulder. He acknowledges you with a slight inclination of his head. You have paid for your coffee as you went, cup by cup, so there is no formal transaction to conclude your visit. You are simply free to go. You join the small trickle of men heading for the door. The provincial Jean-Pierre is clapping his Parisian friend on the shoulder, vowing to meet again at this same spot upon his next visit to the city. The two chess players walk out together, their epic battle forgotten, now discussing the dampness in the air and the likelihood of rain. The shared intense focus of the cafe is breaking apart, its patrons dissolving back into their individual lives and their separate journeys through the night. Pushing open the heavy door is like breaking the surface of a deep, warm pool of water. You step out, and the cold, damp air of the Paris night hits you at once. It's a shock to the system after hours spent in the close, smoky warmth of the cafe. The air smells of whetstone, decaying leaves, and the distant, clean scent of the river Seine. The sensory world of the cafe, the smell of coffee, the taste of sugar, the sound of the viola da gamba vanishes instantly, replaced by the stark, simple reality of the street. The darkness is no longer absolute. A sliver of moon has risen, casting a faint, silvery light that gives the wet cobblestones a ghostly sheen. It is not enough to see by, but it is enough to create shapes out of the shadows, to distinguish the blackness of a doorway from the slightly less black wall beside it. The city is utterly transformed. The bustling, noisy organism of the daytime is now a sleeping beast, its breathing slow and quiet. You pause for a moment, letting your eyes adjust. You are faced with a choice. You could try and navigate the labyrinthine streets on your own, a daunting prospect. Or you could wait. Remember the torch boys, the port flambeau you saw earlier? They are the unofficial public transportation system of the night. A weird cultural quirk of the time was the informal system of stands where these boys, and sometimes men, would wait for customers, much like modern taxi drivers. One such station was often found near popular, late-night establishments like this. And sure enough, huddled in the mouth of a nearby alleyway for shelter, you see the faint flickering glow of a torch. Two boys are there, sharing a single flame to conserve their resources. One is half asleep, leaning against the wall. The other, seeing you and the other man emerge from the cafe, straightens up, his voice a hopeful, reedy cry in the night. Flambeau. Flambeau. The two chess players immediately hire him, and the three of them set off, their moving light a small, brave star against the overwhelming darkness. You watch them go, the single flame casting their elongated shadows on the walls of the narrow street. You, however, are not ready to go home. The coffee still hums in your veins, a persistent thrum of wakefulness. Your mind is too active, too full of the evening's impressions to surrender to sleep. You decide to walk. Not towards a destination, but simply to walk, to experience the strange secret life of the sleeping city. You set off in the opposite direction, moving slowly and deliberately. The heels on your shoes, so useful for navigating the daytime mud, now seem dangerously loud on the silent stones. Each footstep an announcement of your presence. You find yourself trying to walk more softly on the balls of your feet, like a cat burglar. This is the great unwritten historical fact of pre-industrial urban life. The night belonged to a different population. The city you walk through now is not the city of merchants and shoppers. It is the city of watchmen, of bakers firing up their ovens for the morning's bread, of cesspool cleaners performing their necessary but odorous work under the cover of darkness. It is the city of lovers keeping clandestine appointments, and of the homeless seeking shelter in the darkened recesses of church doorways. You are a tourist in this other Paris, a city that wakes when the respectable world goes to sleep. You pass a towering church, its stone facade glowing faintly in the moonlight. Its great wooden doors are barred, but you can hear a low rhythmic sound from within. It is the sound of chanting. A small community of monks, living within the church complex, is observing one of the canonical hours, the ancient monastic practice of praying at set times throughout the day and night. Their voices, muffled by the thick stone walls, are a ghostly and beautiful sound, a reminder that even in the deepest night, some part of the city is always awake and at prayer. You turn a corner, and the smell hits you first. A warm, yeasty, unbelievably delicious scent of baking bread. Ahead, you see a faint glow from a basement window. You are passing a boulangerie. Inside, out of sight, a baker and his apprentices are already hard at work, kneading the dough for the thousands of loaves that Paris will consume tomorrow. They work through the night, their lives dictated by the slow, magical process of fermentation and fire, ensuring that the city wakes up to the smell of fresh bread. The scent is so powerfully comforting, so suggestive of warmth and nourishment, that it feels like a tether to the ordinary, sunlit world. You walk on, the smell of bread slowly fading, replaced once again by the damp, earthy scent of the night. The coffee in your system has made you a detached observer, a floating consciousness gliding through this sleeping world. You are not tired. You are not anxious. You are simply aware. Aware of the silence, of the shifting moonlight, of the secret life humming just beneath the surface of the city's slumber. The walk is not a journey from one point to another. It is an experience in itself, a quiet, solitary epilogue to the social warmth of the coffee house. Your solitary walk continues. The city, which felt so full of hidden life just a moment ago, the chanting monks, the subterranean bakers, has now fallen into a deeper, more profound silence. You are in a residential quarter now, a maze of tall, narrow houses that lean so closely together, they seem to be whispering secrets in the dark. Every window is shuttered, every door is barred. The only signs of life are the occasional snores that rumble through the floorboards and out into the street, a comical and deeply human sound in the otherwise solemn quiet. The moonlight is your only guide, creating a stark, high-contrast world of silver and black. An ornate iron balcony on a wealthy merchant's house becomes a cage of intricate shadows. A line of washing, forgotten and left out overnight, transforms into a row of pale, dancing ghosts. You feel like you are walking through a dream or a half-finished etching. The coffee has sharpened your senses to a fine point, making every detail, every subtle shift in light and shadow, feel significant and strangely beautiful. This quiet, solitary walk is the perfect digestive for the rich meal of social interaction you had at the cafe. You turn a corner and are met with a sudden, startling burst of noise and light. It spills out from a doorway just ahead, a chaotic wave of shouting, laughter, and the tinny, cheerful sound of a fiddle playing a fast, clumsy reel. A bright, greasy yellow light floods the street, making you squint. You have stumbled upon a tavern, and by the sound of it, a very different kind of establishment from the contemplative coffee house you just left. Where Café Laurent was a haven of quiet thought and sober debate, this is a temple of loud, joyous, and deliberate intoxication. The sign above the door, barely visible in the flickering light, depicts a grinning red rooster, Le Coq Rouge. This is where the other half of Paris spends its evenings. Not the scholars and the merchants, but the soldiers, the laborers, the servants spending their day off. They are not drinking a bitter, stimulating brew to sharpen their wits. They are drinking cheap, sour wine to dull their senses, to forget the aches of a long day's work, to lubricate laughter and camaraderie. You pause in the shadows across the street, an unseen observer of this very different scene. The door to the tavern is wide open, and you can see inside. It is a rough, low-ceilinged room. The floor is covered not in clean sand, but in a thick layer of dirty straw, littered with scraps of food and spilled drink. The air, even from here, is thick with the smell of stale wine, sweat, and roasting meat. A group of off-duty soldiers, still in their dusty uniforms, are roaring with laughter at a joke, banging their pewter mugs on the rough-hewn wooden table. In the corner, a man plays the fiddle with more enthusiasm than skill, his foot stomping out a frantic rhythm. This is a major historical fact of Parisian social life. Wine and coffee created two distinct, almost parallel universes of evening entertainment. The tavern and the coffee house catered to different clienteles, different moods, and different aspirations. One was about release, the other about refinement. One was about losing control, the other about gaining it. While the men in the coffee house debated the existence of a vacuum, the men in the tavern were more concerned with the immediate pressing reality of an empty mug. Suddenly, two men stumble out of the doorway, locked in a drunken, clumsy embrace that is half fight, half dance. They are shouting at each other, but their words are slurred and indistinct. They stagger into the middle of the street, trip over their own feet, and fall into a heap, their anger immediately dissolving into helpless laughter. They lie there for a moment, two tangled silhouettes in the yellow light, before one of them manages to get to his feet and pull his friend up. They clap each other on the back, their argument forgotten, and wander off down the street, their voices raised in a terrible, off-key song. The scene is a perfect illustration of a weird and specific cultural phenomenon, the ritualized, almost theatrical nature of drunkenness. For many, getting drunk was not just a side effect of drinking. It was the entire point. There was a certain social script to it, the loud arguments, the maudlin singing, the dramatic reconciliations. Scholars continue to debate whether this public performance of intoxication was a genuine loss of inhibition, or a form of social release that followed its own unwritten rules and expectations. You watch as the two men disappear into the darkness, their song fading away. The brief, chaotic drama is over. The tavern continues to hum with its own raw, vibrant energy. You feel no desire to go inside. The coffee in your system has made you a tourist in the land of inebriation, an anthropologist observing a foreign tribe. Your current state of heightened, clear-headed awareness feels like a precious thing, a delicate bubble you don't want to burst with the cheap pin of sour wine. You turn away from the light and noise of Le Coq Rouge and slip back into the quiet, silvery shadows. The contrast is immense. It feels like you have just changed channels on a television that hasn't been invented yet, switching from a loud, chaotic comedy to a silent, contemplative film. Your quiet walk, which had felt aimless before, now feels purposeful. You are not just wandering. You are actively choosing the world of the mind over the world of the body, the path of quiet observation over loud participation. You are following the invisible map laid out for you by the bitter, dark drink you consumed hours ago. The path leads you onward, deeper into the sleeping heart of the city. You leave the raucous glow of the tavern behind, and the deep, comforting silence of the city closes in around you once more. The brief encounter with that other world, the world of wine and song, has sharpened your appreciation for this one. The quiet is not an absence of sound, but a presence in itself. It is a soft, heavy blanket that muffles the sharp edges of the world. Your footsteps seem to echo less now, as if the city has finally accepted your presence and allowed you to move through it without announcement. Your path begins to slope gently downwards. You can feel it in your legs, a subtle change in the effort of walking. The air changes too. It becomes heavier, damper, and carries a new scent, the unmistakable, ancient smell of the river. It's a complex aroma of wet earth, green plants, and something deeper, something metallic and faintly fishy. You are approaching the Seine. Soon, the narrow streets open up, and you find yourself standing on the Quai des Augustins. Before you, the river lies like a wide, dark ribbon of polished steel, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the sliver of moon and a few scattered bright stars. The view is breathtaking. On the far bank, you can see the imposing, shadowy mass of the Louvre Palace, its long, elegant facade a study in architectural power. To your right, the twin towers of Notre Dame Cathedral rise up, their Gothic spires black against the slightly less black sky. It is a scene of profound, silent majesty. By day, this riverbank would be a hive of activity. Barges being loaded and unloaded, washerwomen beating laundry on the stone steps, merchants haggling, fishermen casting their nets. But now it is deserted. The city has turned its back on its own heart, and you have it all to yourself. You walk along the quayside, the river a constant, silent companion to your left. You pass by the dark, skeletal shapes of booksellers' stalls. Remember the street you walked past earlier? The one where you saw the writer scribbling away in the cafe. This is where his work, if it ever finds a printer and a royal privilege, might one day end up. By day, these simple wooden boxes and trestle tables are a bustling outdoor library, a key part of the city's literary life. Booksellers, known as libraires, would display their wares here: new editions of the classics, political pamphlets, slim volumes of poetry, theological treatises. It was a place where a student with only a few coins could browse the latest ideas from the Republic of Letters. Now, the stalls are just empty, wooden shelves, their precious contents locked away for the night. This brings to mind a strange but significant cultural practice related to the book trade. Many libraires were not just sellers of books, but also their publishers. A writer like the one in the cafe would not receive royalties in the modern sense. Instead, he would typically sell his manuscript outright to the libraire for a one-time fee. The libraire then took on all the risk and expense of printing, and if the book was a success, he reaped all the rewards. This system made the relationship between authors and publishers a complex, often adversarial one, filled with mutual suspicion and financial haggling. It was a system that favored the businessman over the artist. You continue your walk. The silent, empty bookstalls a poignant reminder of the vibrant intellectual life they represent during the day. As you near the Pont Neuf, the new bridge, you hear a new sound. It is a soft, rhythmic splashing. You peer over the stone embankment and see the source. A small boat is tethered to a ring at the bottom of the stone steps that lead down to the water. In the boat, a man is working silently, using a long-handled net to scoop debris from the surface of the water. He is a scavenger of the river, one of the city's unseen recyclers. His catch is not fish, but anything of value that might have been lost or discarded into the Seine. A dropped coin, a piece of scrap metal, a length of rope, or, most gruesomely, the bodies of the drowned, for which there was often a small reward. His is a lonely, nocturnal profession, lit only by the moon and the faint hope of finding something valuable in the city's liquid trash heap. It is a stark reminder that for some, the night is not a time for rest or contemplation, but for hard, grim work. This is a major historical fact about the river. The Seine was not a picturesque backdrop for romantic walks. It was a working artery of the city. It was simultaneously a highway for transport, a source of drinking water, and a massive, open sewer. All of the city's waste, from household refuse to the blood from slaughterhouses, eventually found its way into the river. Historians still struggle to fully comprehend how a city could function with its primary water source so profoundly and constantly polluted. It speaks to a level of resilience and a tolerance for filth that is almost unimaginable to the modern mind. You look from the scavenger in his boat to the magnificent silhouette of the Louvre on the far bank. The contrast is jarring. The palace, a symbol of immense power, wealth, and order, stands watch over a river where men sift through garbage in the dark. The formal, beautiful Paris of the king and the messy, organic, and sometimes desperate Paris of the common people exist side by side, reflected in the same dark water. The coffee, which has kept you awake and alert for so long, now seems to be changing its effect. The sharp, intellectual clarity is softening into a more expansive, philosophical melancholy. You feel a profound sense of the city's immense complexity, its layers of beauty and squalor, of high-minded thought and base survival. You are just a single, sleepless consciousness, a tiny witness to the vast, sprawling, contradictory life of this great city. You stand on the edge of the dark water, under the silent gaze of the palace and the cathedral, and you feel both completely alone and deeply connected to everything around you. The scavenger's boat drifts silently downriver, his slow, rhythmic work a quiet testament to the city's hidden economies. You turn away from the river, leaving its dark reflections and melancholic grandeur behind, and walk towards the Pont Neuf. Despite its name, the new bridge is already over 60 years old and is the city's busiest and most famous thoroughfare. It was a revolutionary piece of urban design for its time. Unlike the older bridges, which were crowded with houses and shops built directly upon them, the Pont Neuf was wide and open, built purely for transit. And, most remarkably, it had sidewalks, raised walkways that protected pedestrians from the chaos of the carriage traffic and the ubiquitous mud. Walking across it feels like a small taste of the future. Even at this late hour, the bridge is not entirely deserted. It is a world unto itself, a kind of permanent 24-hour street fair. In the triangular bastions that jut out over the river piers, little semicircular stone benches are built into the walls. During the day, these spaces, known as demi-lunes, would be crammed with a dizzying array of vendors and entertainers. You would find tooth pullers with their terrifying pliers and jars of extracted molars, street performers with dancing monkeys, sellers of patent medicines and miracle cures, pamphleteers hawking the latest scandalous verse about a court nobleman. It was a microcosm of the entire city's chaotic energy, concentrated on one strip of stone. Now, in the dead of night, the vendors are gone, but their ghosts remain. A few shadowy figures are huddled on the stone benches, wrapped in rags against the cold river air. These are the bridge's permanent residents, the homeless who have claimed these small, sheltered alcoves as their own. They are silent, still figures, barely distinguishable from the stone they lean against. As you pass, one of them coughs, a dry, rattling sound that echoes in the quiet. It's a stark reminder that for many, the city is not a place of opportunity and entertainment, but a daily struggle for simple survival. At the center of the bridge, where it crosses the tip of the Isle de l'Isle site, stands a large, imposing bronze statue. It is King Henry IV on horseback, the good King Henry, grandfather of the current king, Louis XIV. He sits astride his powerful warhorse, his bronze gaze fixed eternally towards the east, a symbol of royal authority and stability. The statue is a major landmark, a reference point for all Parisians. It is the heart of the city. This is a major historical fact about the bridge and its statue. The Pont Neuf was one of the first places in Paris where a secular, political monument was given such a prominent public space. Previously, such grand works were reserved for religious figures inside churches. The statue of Henry IV, erected by his widow Marie de Medici, was a powerful piece of political propaganda, designed to cement the legitimacy of the Bourbon dynasty and remind the populace of the king, who had ended the bloody wars of religion. It was a statement that the power of the monarch was as permanent and unshakable as bronze. You stop for a moment to look up at the dark, silent figure. The moonlight catches the king's features, giving them a cold, severe expression. And it is here that you notice something strange. Tucked into the crook of the king's bronze arm is a small folded piece of paper. You look closer. Another piece is stuck to the horse's raised hoof with a dab of wax. This is evidence of a peculiar and dangerous Parisian tradition known as the pasquinade. The base of the statue was a kind of unofficial public notice board, a place where anonymous citizens would affix poems, jokes, and most often, savage political satires aimed at the government and the current king. It was an act of high-risk graffiti. The authorities would regularly send guards to clear the statue of these illicit texts, and anyone caught posting one would face severe punishment. Yet the practice persisted. It was a silent, paper-based rebellion, a way for the voiceless to speak directly to the bronze embodiment of power. This is a wonderful, obscure cultural detail. The very monument designed to project an image of absolute royal authority had been co-opted by the people as a stage for their descent. It was a constant low-level battle for control of public space and public opinion, waged with paper and wax instead of swords. You wonder what is written on the small scraps of paper. Is it a witty couplet mocking the king's latest mistress? A bitter complaint about the price of bread? A crude joke? You have no way of knowing, and getting close enough to read, it would be an act of profound foolishness. But their mere presence is a testament to the city's indomitable, insubordinate spirit. You continue across the bridge, leaving the Bronze King and his secret messages behind. The coffee has been your companion for this entire nocturnal journey. It led you from the humble stall of Pascal to the refined salon of Laurent. It fueled your mind through debates on philosophy and your spirit through the strains of a viola da gamba. It has been your shield against the drunken chaos of the tavern and your lens for the silent beauty of the river. Now, its effects are beginning to wane. The sharp clarity is softening, the edges of your thoughts beginning to blur. A deep, bone-weary fatigue, held at bay for hours, is finally beginning to seep into your lens. The journey is nearing its end. Your long day in 17th century Paris is almost over. You have made it further than most. The final leg of your journey is just ahead. The walk home and the promise of sleep.
You have crossed the Pont Neuf, leaving the sleeping isle Della behind you. You are back on the right bank now. The part of the city where commerce and finance have their home. But at this hour, the heart is still. The streets here are a little wider. The houses a little grander. But the darkness is just as profound. The silence just as deep. The coffee's frantic grip on your consciousness has loosened. Its sharp, intellectual buzz mellowing into a soft, resonant hum, like a plucked string that is slowly vibrating into silence. The profound fatigue that has been waiting patiently in the wings all evening is finally beginning to take center stage. Each step requires a little more conscious effort than the last. You navigate the final few streets to your lodgings. There are no signs to guide you. No helpful names posted on the corner. The city relies on a more organic and frankly less efficient system of navigation known as getting lost until you recognize something. You know your way by instinct, by the specific curve of a lane, the unique pattern of cobblestones in a small square, the particular lean of a certain timber-framed house. It is a map inscribed not on paper, but in your memory. A map you could walk blindfolded if you had to. And tonight, in this deep darkness, finally you see it. A tall, narrow building, indistinguishable from its neighbors, save for the fact that you know it is yours. There is no grand entrance, just a heavy, scarred wooden door set into the stone facade. You have arrived. Home sweet. Well, home. Anyway, this is a major historical fact of urban living for most Parisians. Very few people, aside from the fabulously wealthy nobility or the upper echelons of the bourgeoisie, lived in a whole house to themselves. The vast majority lived in buildings like this one, renting a room or two from a landlord who might live on the ground floor or, just as likely, in another part of the city entirely. This is the ancestor of the modern apartment building, a vertical slice of Parisian society. The wealthiest tenants lived on the first floor above the ground level, which was considered the most desirable. The rooms were larger, the ceilings higher, and it was far enough from the street to avoid the noise and smell, but not so high as to make the climb exhausting. With each ascending floor, the prestige, the price, and the size of the lodgings diminished. You, being a man of modest, but not destitute means, live on the third floor. You pull a heavy iron key from your pocket and fit it into the large, crude lock on the main door. It turns with a loud, grating groan that seems to violate the silence of the street. The door swings inward, opening into a pitch-black entryway and the familiar smell of the building. A layered aroma of damp stone, dust, old wood, and the faint ghostly scent of a cabbage soup that was cooked on the floor below several hours ago. You step inside and pull the heavy door shut, the sound of its closing a definitive end to your long, wandering night. The world of the street is locked away. You are in your sanctuary now. The journey is not quite over. You now face the final ascent, the staircase. It is a magnificent spiral of dark, worn oak. Its central column is thick as a tree trunk. It is also completely unlit. You place one hand on the cool, smooth wood of the banister, a familiar and reassuring guide in the darkness. You begin to climb, your footsteps creaking on the old treads. Each creak seems to tell a story. The staircase is the building's central artery. It's Main Street. It's a vertical neighborhood, a community built on the shared experience of complaining about the landlord. As you climb past the first floor, you hear the deep, rumbling snores of Monsieur Dubois, the silk merchant. From the second floor, the home of the widow and her 3 young children, you hear nothing but a profound silence. You continue upwards, your breathing becoming a little heavier with the effort. You are acutely aware of your own body now. The ache in your legs, the weariness in your back. The coffee has completely abandoned its post as your chemical bodyguard against fatigue. You reach your land in the familiar flat space of worn floorboards outside your own door. And here you witness a small common detail of life in this building, a testament to its strange architecture. A young man, an apprentice who lives on the floor above you, stumbles out of a doorway down the hall, half-dressed and looking disoriented. He is not emerging from his own room. He has just walked through the room of his neighbors, the only way to get from his own small chamber to the staircase, and presumably to the privy in the courtyard below. This is the result of buildings being subdivided over and over again, the lack of corridors. Rooms often simply opened one into another in a style known as privacy was a fluid concept, a luxury many people simply did not have. It remains a point of speculation for social historians just how 17th century Parisians navigated this constant, casual intimacy, or if they even perceived it as a lack of privacy at all. The apprentice gives you a sleepy, embarrassed nod and continues his journey downstairs. You turn to your own door, to your own small square of private space in this crowded, interconnected world.
Your own door is a comfort. It is your personal frontier, the line between the shared world of the staircase and the private realm of your own life. You find the keyhole by touch, a familiar geography in the dark wood. You engage in the nightly ritual of stabbing the general vicinity of the lock with your key until you hear a satisfying, solid click. The sound is one of the most reassuring in the world. You push the door open and step inside. The air in your room is cool and still. It smells of old paper, beeswax from your last candle, and the faint, clean scent of the lye soap you use. You close the door behind you, and for the first time since you left hours ago, you are truly alone. The silence is different in here. It is not the vast, empty silence of the street, but a smaller, more personal silence. It is the silence of your own life, waiting for you to return to it. You don't light a candle. Your eyes, long accustomed to the darkness, can make out the familiar shapes of your small world. The room is exactly as you left it. A state of organized personal chaos that only you understand the system of. A stack of books on the floor next to a small table. Your coat thrown over the back of the room's single, sturdy chair. Your shaving razor and bowl on the washstand in the corner. It is not the elegant, mirrored salon of the coffee house. It is the simple, unadorned reality of your daily existence. And there, dominating the small space, is your bed. It's not just furniture. It's your fortress of solitude, your personal island in the sea of the city. This is a major historical fact that is easy to forget. Your bed is likely the single most valuable object you own. In wills and testaments of the period, the bed is almost always the first item listed, bequeathed with great care and ceremony. It was a significant investment, a symbol of stability and status. To own your own bed was to have a firm anchor in the world. It is a sturdy wooden frame, roped tightly with a lattice of hemp cords that support the mattress. The mattress itself is not soft and yielding. It is a thick canvas sack, stuffed tightly with straw. It rustles when you press down on it, and it smells faintly of dry grass. Over this is a smaller, softer feather bed, a precious luxury that you were fortunate enough to inherit. You have 2 heavy wool blankets and a pair of simple linen sheets. But the most important feature of the bed is the curtains. Heavy drapes of dark, thick wool hang from a wooden tester frame above, ready to be drawn on all 4 sides. They are not for decoration. They are a vital piece of technology. In a drafty, poorly heated room, the curtains create a small, private tent, a room within a room that traps your body heat and keeps you warm through the cold Parisian night. They also provide a final, crucial layer of privacy. In a world where it was not uncommon for family members, or even strangers, to share a bed for warmth, a fascinating cultural tidbit, the curtains could create a small bastion of personal space. You, thankfully, have this bed all to yourself. You begin the slow, tired ritual of preparing for sleep. You unbuckle your shoes and let them drop to the floor with a soft thud. You pull off your coat and your waistcoat, your movements heavy and deliberate. You unwind the cravat from your neck. Each layer of clothing you remove feels like shedding a layer of the day, of the outside world, of the person you have to be for others. You are returning to your essential self. You pour a little water from the pitcher on your washstand into the bowl and splash your face. The water is shockingly cold, but it feels good, washing away the last lingering haze of the cafe smoke and the city's grime. The coffee has made its final departure. The gentle hum has faded completely, replaced by the deep, insistent pull of sleep. Your thoughts are no longer sharp and analytical. They are soft, drifting, and slow. You pull on a long linen nightshirt, your final uniform for the night. You pull back the heavy blankets on your bed. The linen sheets are cool to the touch. You walk to the window and push open the wooden shutters for a moment. The sliver of moon is higher in the sky now. The city below is as silent as a tomb. There is nothing more to see, nothing more to think about. You close the shutters, plunging the room into an absolute velvety blackness. You feel your way back to the bed, your hands knowing the way perfectly. You climb in, the rustle of the straw mattress a comforting, familiar sound. You pull the heavy blankets up to your chin and then reach out and draw the thick wool curtains, one by one, sealing yourself into your small, warm, dark world. Historians still debate the sleeping patterns of pre-industrial people. Some argue for a segmented sleep pattern with a period of wakefulness in the middle of the night, while others believe this was far from universal. But tonight, you feel no desire for segmented sleep. You desire only a long, deep, uninterrupted plunge into oblivion. The day is done. The journey is over. Sleep is waiting for you like an old, patient friend. Inside the curtained world of your bed, the last vestiges of the city fall away completely. The darkness is absolute, a thick, palpable blackness that is not empty, but full of a profound and welcome quiet. The cool air of the room is held at bay by the heavy wool drapes, and the small space around you begins to warm with the heat of your own body. You are in your cocoon, your personal night ark floating on a sea of city-wide slumber. You lie on your back, your head sinking into the thin pillow. The fatigue is no longer an ache or a pressure. It has become a pleasant, heavy softness that suffuses your entire body. Your limbs feel weighted, boneless. Your mind, which for hours was a brightly lit stage of ideas and observations, the news from the Gazette, the allegorical lion, the debate on the vacuum, the silent rebellion of the Pasquinade, is now dimming its lights. The actors are taking their final bows and exiting into the wings. The flow of your thoughts begins to change. They are no longer linear or logical. They are becoming a gentle drifting collage of the day's impressions, unmoored from time and context. An image floats up behind your closed eyelids. The intense, concentrated face of the chess player, his brow furrowed. Then it dissolves into the sound of the viola da gamba, a single, reedy note that hangs in your mind for a moment before fading. You see the flash of a silver shoe buckle in the candlelight, then the dark, empty eye sockets of the memento mori skull, not frightening, but strangely peaceful. You smell the rich, earthy aroma of the coffee, then the warm, yeasty scent of the baker's hidden ovens. These memories are no longer sharp and distinct. They are blending into one another, their edges softening, like watercolors bleeding together on a damp page. The frantic scratching of the writer's quill merges with the soft rustle of your straw mattress. The face of the provincial gentleman, Jean-Pierre, grimacing at his first taste of coffee, melts into the grinning face of the red rooster on the tavern sign. The sound of the royal watch's marching feet becomes the rhythmic splashing of the scavenger's net in the dark waters of the Seine. This is the gentle slide into the first stage of sleep, a state of hypnagogia where the mind, freed from its daytime duties of focus and reason, begins to play. It is a deeply personal and creative state, a nightly descent into your own private surrealism. You are not thinking anymore. You are simply witnessing the slow, quiet dismantling of the day. You shift your position in the bed, rolling onto your side. The feather bed beneath you compresses, a soft counterpoint to the firm, rustling support of the straw mattress below. You pull the heavy blankets tighter around your shoulders. The world has shrunk to this small, warm space. Your breathing is slow and deep. You can hear the soft, steady beat of your own heart, a quiet, internal drum marking the slow rhythm of the night. The major historical reality of this moment is its universality. The king himself, in his magnificent gilded bed at Versailles, surrounded by guards and courtiers, is undergoing the same simple, biological process. So too is the scavenger in his damp, cold hovel, the baker resting before his next batch of dough, the monk in his Spartan cell. Across the city, across the kingdom, across the entire continent, millions of minds are detaching from the world of waking consciousness and drifting into this same mysterious, shared ocean of sleep. And yet, your experience is uniquely your own, colored by the specific events of your day. The coffee, the central character in your evening story, has left a final ghostly imprint on your drowsing mind. It was a catalyst, a key that unlocked a certain kind of Parisian night for you. Without it, you would have been home hours ago, your evening a blank, unwritten page. Instead, you have a rich tapestry of memories to unravel as you drift off. It has been a long and stimulating journey, and now the final destination is here. You feel a profound sense of gratitude for the simple, biological miracle of sleep, the nightly reset that makes the efforts of the day possible and bearable. The last coherent thought to form in your mind is a simple one. You wonder, vaguely, if Monsieur Lawrence Cafe will have any of that good sugar tomorrow. Then that thought, too, dissolves. The images fade. The sounds fall silent. The last flicker of consciousness gutters and goes out. You are no longer in the bed, in the room, in the city. You are simply asleep. The city sleeps around you. A profound, deep-set quiet has settled over the rooftops and chimneys. A silence broken only by the occasional cry of a hunting owl or the distant, lonely tolling of a monastery bell marking another passing hour. The moon has climbed to its zenith and begun its slow descent towards the western horizon, its cool white light painting the narrow streets in shifting patterns of silver and shadow. Paris is a city holding its breath. Inside your small, curtained bed, you are deep in the world of dreams. What does a 17th century man dream about? Do you dream of walking through the magnificent sun-drenched gardens of Versailles, a place you have only heard described in the Gazette? Do you dream of sailing on a tall ship to the Levant, the source of the magical coffee that so captivated your evening? Or are your dreams more mundane? Perhaps you are trying to solve an impossible problem at work, or you are arguing with the silk merchant from the first floor about a shared debt. The science of dreams is a mystery that future centuries will ponder, but the raw material of your dreams is the life you live. Your sleeping mind is sifting through the anxieties, the hopes, and the simple, everyday textures of your existence. Maybe you are back in Café Laurent, but the mirrors on the walls show you not your own reflection, but the face of King Henry IV from the statue on the Pont Neuf. Maybe the writer in the corner is not writing with ink, but with the dark, steaming coffee itself, his words vanishing from the page as soon as they are written. The human mind, whether in the 17th century or the 21st, is a restless and creative thing. It uses the quiet theater of sleep to stage its strange allegorical plays. Historians can reconstruct the physical world of the past, the buildings, the clothes, the tools, but the internal world of dreams remains a vast, unknowable territory. We can only speculate that your dreams are as vivid, as confusing, and as emotionally resonant as our own. They are the invisible, unwritten history of the human heart. While you are lost in these private dramas, the city outside is not entirely still. The great slow-moving machine of Paris is beginning to stir, preparing for the dawn. Deep in the cavernous central market of Les Halles, the first carts from the countryside are beginning to arrive. Pulled by slow, weary horses, they are laden with the produce that will feed the city for the coming day. Mountains of cabbages, baskets of onions, crates of squawking chickens. The farmers and merchants, who have been traveling through the dark for hours, greet each other with low, tired voices, their breath pluming in the cold night air. The city's stomach is getting ready to wake up. The river, too, is coming back to life. The first heavy barges, loaded with firewood from the forests upstream, are being pulled into their moorings along the quays. The quiet work of the night scavenger is giving way to the noisier, more organized commerce of the day. And in 1,000 different homes, a new sound begins to emerge. It is the sound of a flint striking steel, a shower of sparks, a delicate breath on a waiting piece of tinder. It is the sound of the first fires of the day being lit. In kitchens and hearths across the city, small flames are being coaxed into life, their warmth a welcome defense against the morning chill. Soon, the smell of wood smoke will begin to drift from the chimneys, a signal that the city is breathing once more. You, however, are oblivious to all of this. You are in the deepest part of your sleep, the slow wave state where the body performs its most profound work of restoration. Your muscles are relaxed, your heart rate is slow, your breathing is even and deep. This is the great healing trough of the night. A strange cultural tidbit of the era is the common belief in the power of the night air, the saran, to cause illness. It was thought that the damp, cool air that fell after sunset was filled with unhealthy vapors, and that to breathe it in was to invite fever and ague. This is why windows were so tightly shuttered, why bed curtains were so thick. Your small, warm, stuffy cocoon of a bed is not just for comfort. It is a medical device, a shield against the perceived dangers of the atmosphere. The idea of sleeping with a window open for a fresh breeze would have been seen as an act of reckless self-harm. So you sleep on, sealed in your warm, protected space, while the world outside slowly, incrementally, begins its inexorable turn back towards the day. The tide of silence is beginning to recede, and the first faint sounds of the waking city are washing up on the distant shores of your consciousness. But they have not reached you yet. For now, you remain in the still, dark depths, gathering your strength for the light to come. The first hint of dawn is not a light, but a sound. It is the faint, distant crowing of a rooster from a courtyard somewhere in the tangled web of the city. It is a lonely, hopeful sound, a thin crack in the solid wall of the night. It is followed by another, and then another, a ragged chorus of natural alarm clocks announcing a shift in the world. This sound, faint as it is, penetrates the layers of your sleep, pulling you gently upwards from the deep, dreamless abyss. You do not wake, not yet, but you begin the slow ascent towards consciousness. Your mind is still adrift, but it is no longer in the deep ocean. It is in the shallow, sun-dappled waters closer to shore. The next sound is a human one. It is the heavy, rhythmic clang of the great bell of Notre Dame, ringing for the first service of the day. The sound rolls across the rooftops, a wave of pure, resonant bronze. It is a sound that measures out the life of the city, a sound that has marked the beginning of this day and thousands of days before it. This time, its message is for you. It finds a way through your shutters, through your woolen bed curtains, and into your sleep-fogged mind. You stir. Your body, which has been so still for hours, moves with a deep, instinctual stretch. Your arm pushes against the heavy curtain of the bed, a subconscious gesture towards the world outside your small, dark nest. You are a ship that has been anchored for the night, and now you can feel the first gentle tug of the morning tide. A sliver of pale, gray light has found a crack in your shutters. It is not the bright, warm light of day, but its cool, quiet precursor. It illuminates the rich, dark wool of your bed curtains, giving them texture and form. The absolute blackness has retreated, replaced by a soft, pearlescent gloom. Your room is slowly emerging from the shadows, its familiar shapes reassembling themselves. Your eyelids flicker open. For a moment, you are simply a consciousness in a dark, warm space, with no memory of who or where you are. Then, slowly, it returns. The bed, the room, the city. The long, winding journey of the previous evening. The coffee house. The taste of that strange, bitter, wonderful drink. It all comes back to you not as a sharp memory, but as a soft, dreamlike impression, the emotional echo of the experience. You are awake, but you do not move. You lie still, savoring the last moments of warmth and stillness before the demands of the day begin. This is a quiet, liminal space between the world of sleep and the world of waking, a brief, peaceful harbor. The fatigue is gone, washed away by the long night. In its place is a feeling of deep, quiet rest. The sound from the street below are becoming more frequent now. The rumble of an iron-shod cartwheel on the cobblestones. The cry of a water seller, his voice echoing in the morning air. The distant rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer. The city is stretching, yawning, and coming to life. Soon, you will have to join it. Soon, you will have to rise, light your own fire, dress, and face the day. But not yet. For now, there is only the soft warmth of the blankets, the gentle light filtering through the shutters, and the quiet, steady rhythm of your own breathing. You have traveled through a day and a night in a time long past, a journey fueled by a simple, revolutionary drink. You have seen the city at work and at play, in debate and in slumber. And now, you have reached the dawn of a new day. You close your eyes for a final moment, a silent farewell to the night, and a quiet welcome to the morning. And now, as our own journey comes to its close, let the rhythm of your own breathing guide you. Let the sounds and images of this story fade, like the last wisps of a pleasant dream upon waking. There is nothing more to see, nothing more to do. There is only this quiet moment, this comfortable space you have found for yourself. If you are still awake, know that it is all right. Simply allow your mind to be still, letting thoughts come and go without holding on to them, like clouds passing in a vast and quiet sky. The night is a gentle space, a time for rest and for peace. Let the silence be a soft blanket, and the darkness a comforting friend. Let your body feel heavy and warm and safe. Let yourself drift. Let yourself rest. There is nothing else that needs to be done. Sleep well.